Imagine waking up one day with the unsettling realization that the life you've been living is not truly your own. That every decision you've made, every belief you hold, even the desires that drive you, may not have originated from your deepest self, but from the expectations, conditioning, and unseen influences of the world around you. Think about it. How much of your identity is a reflection of your authentic self? And how much of it is a carefully constructed mask, shaped by family, culture, society, or fear? How often do you feel like you're playing a role in someone else's script rather than living your own? Carl Jung believed life doesn't truly begin until you find yourself. But what does that mean in practice? Is it just self-awareness, or something far more transformative? Something that most people never achieve? The truth is this: most of us go through life half asleep, mistaking comfort for happiness, validation for love, routine for purpose. And we don't even notice until something shakes us. A crisis, a loss, or simply a quiet moment when the mask slips and we're left face to face with the emptiness underneath. Today, we're exploring 15 signs you haven't truly found yourself yet. These aren't surface-level tips. These are psychological signals, backed by philosophy and modern research, that reveal whether you're still trapped in illusion or finally on the path to authenticity. And the first one is one almost everyone feels, but rarely admits. Sign 1. You constantly seek validation. Do you ever catch yourself wondering what others think of you, almost reflexively? Before making a choice, before posting online, before speaking your mind, you imagine the reactions. Approval feels like oxygen. Criticism feels like suffocation. This is one of the clearest signs you haven't found yourself yet. Because when you don't know who you are, you outsource your identity. You measure your worth in likes, compliments, and approval. But deep down, it never feels solid, because it isn't yours. A 2020 study from the University of Michigan found that people who base self-worth on external approval are more prone to anxiety, depression, and burnout. Why? Because they're running on borrowed fuel. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to gain acceptance. It's useful in society, but dangerous when we confuse it with our true self. When you've truly found yourself, validation becomes nice, but not necessary. Until then, you'll always be at the mercy of other people's opinions. Sign 2. Silence makes you uneasy. Have you noticed how rare silence is? We fill it with background noise, podcasts, endless scrolling. Because silence exposes something many people don't want to face: themselves. If you squirm in silence, if you always need distraction, it's a sign you haven't met your own depths yet. A 2019 study from Duke University showed that even 2 minutes of silence activates the brain's default mode network, the region linked to self-reflection and identity processing. That's why silence feels heavy. It's forcing you to look inward. But if you haven't found yourself, silence feels like a threat. You'd rather drown in noise than face the questions it brings. The Stoics practiced the opposite. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes stronger when it retreats into itself. They knew that peace isn't found in distraction. It's found when you can sit with yourself without flinching. If silence feels unbearable, it's not because it's empty. It's because it's full of the parts of you you've been avoiding. Sign 3. You live on autopilot. wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. Sound familiar? Most people live this way. Routines aren't bad, but when your life feels like it's happening to you instead of being lived by you, you're on autopilot. This isn't living, it's surviving. A Harvard Business Review study in 2021 found that up to 47% of our waking hours are spent mind-wandering, doing tasks automatically without conscious awareness. In that state, people reported lower happiness, regardless of the activity. Jung warned that when we don't confront our unconscious, we become its puppet. The shadow drives, and the ego follows. You think you're choosing, but really you're replaying patterns. Living on autopilot is a clear sign you haven't found yourself yet, because when you do, life stops feeling like repetition. It feels deliberate. Even the smallest actions carry intention. Until then, the days blur together. Sign 4. You struggle to be alone. Think about the last time you were truly alone, not just physically, but emotionally. No phone, no TV, no company, just you. How did it feel? Peaceful or unbearable? If solitude feels like punishment, it's because you haven't built a relationship with yourself yet. In 2014, a University of Virginia study found that participants preferred giving themselves mild electric shocks rather than sit in silence alone with their thoughts for just 15 minutes. That's how uncomfortable people are with themselves. But here's the paradox. If you can't stand your own company, you'll always chase someone else's, not out of love, but out of escape. Relationships become crutches instead of choices. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessing is to be master of oneself. Until you find yourself, solitude will feel like exile. Once you do, it feels like freedom." Sign 5. You repeat the same painful patterns. Different faces, same story. Maybe you keep ending up in the same kind of relationship. Maybe you sabotage opportunities. Maybe your life feels like déjà vu, repeating loops you swore you'd escape. This isn't coincidence. It's unconscious repetition. A 2018 study in the Journal of Behavioral Science described repetition compulsion, the tendency to recreate familiar pain because the psyche is trying to resolve what's unresolved. Until you face your inner wounds, they'll script your outer life. Jung put it bluntly, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If you find yourself asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" That's your clue. You haven't found yourself yet. You're still being pulled by old shadows, unhealed wounds, invisible patterns. The loops will keep running until you choose to face them. Sign 6. You project what you deny. Ever met someone and instantly disliked them? Not because they hurt you, not because of anything they said, but simply because something about them triggered you. That's projection. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. What you can't stand in others often mirrors what you've rejected in yourself. The arrogance you condemn, the weakness you mock, the sensitivity you dismiss, all shadows you've pushed down, reappearing on someone else's face." A 2022 Stanford study confirmed this. Participants who strongly condemned certain traits in others often scored higher on hidden measures of those same traits. If you're easily triggered, if you feel irrational dislike for certain people, it's not random. It's your unconscious trying to show you the parts of yourself you haven't integrated. Until you face that, you'll live at war with your own reflection. Sign 7. Your relationships feel shallow. You laugh, you share stories, you hang out. But something's missing. The connection doesn't go deep. You leave feeling lonelier than before. That's because if you haven't found yourself, nobody else can truly find you either. What they're relating to is your persona, the mask you present, not the real you. A 2018 University of Michigan study found authenticity was the strongest predictor of relationship satisfaction. Not compatibility, not shared hobbies, authenticity. If you hide your truth, your shadow, your real feelings, then your connections stay on the surface, and no amount of company can fill the emptiness. Real connection only happens when the mask drops, but to drop it, you have to know who's behind it. Sign 8. You fear rejection more than you value truth. Think about the last time you held back your opinion. Maybe you didn't want to rock the boat. Maybe you stayed quiet to keep the peace. That's fear of rejection. And here's the problem. When you let that fear control you, you trade authenticity for approval. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because truth will always offend someone. Living authentically means some people won't like you. That's inevitable. A 2020 study from Columbia University showed that people who consistently suppress their opinions to avoid conflict experience higher stress levels, poorer relationships, and less self-respect. If rejection scares you more than self-betrayal, that's a sign you haven't truly found yourself yet. Because when you do, truth matters more than applause. Sign 9. You struggle with authority and external control. Do you notice how some people are obsessed with fitting in, while others rebel against every rule just to prove they're free? Both are two sides of the same coin. When you haven't found yourself, authority feels threatening. You either conform completely, or you fight compulsively. But true freedom isn't blind obedience or blind rebellion. It's knowing yourself well enough that your actions come from choice, not reaction. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A 2021 Oxford study on autonomy found that people with strong internal self-definition were less swayed by external pressures, whether conformist or rebellious. They didn't need to prove anything. They just lived aligned. If rules, authority, or opinions control you, even in resistance, that's a sign you haven't found your center yet. Sign 10. You avoid the hard questions. Who am I? What do I want? What am I doing here? These questions are ancient. They're at the core of philosophy, spirituality, and psychology. But most people spend their whole lives avoiding them. Why? Because they destabilize the persona. They shake the illusion of certainty. So we distract ourselves. Work, entertainment, endless busyness. Anything to avoid the discomfort of looking inward. But Jung said the unlived life is the greatest burden. And the Stoics warned that to avoid self-inquiry is to waste life itself. A 2019 MIT behavioral study found that people who regularly practiced self-inquiry, deliberate reflection on identity and purpose, reported significantly higher life satisfaction and resilience. If the big questions scare you, it's because you're not ready to confront the answers, which means you haven't found yourself yet. Sign 11. You feel alienated, even in a crowd. Have you ever been surrounded by people, laughing, talking, blending in, and still felt invisible? This sense of alienation isn't about others. It's about you. When you haven't found yourself, even connection feels hollow, because no one can truly see you until you do. Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." A 2021 University of Chicago study found that people who suppress authentic thoughts and emotions reported more loneliness, even if they had large social circles. So, here's the question. Are you really unseen, or are you hiding? Sign 12. You sense untapped potential. It's that nagging feeling. I could be more than this. You might even be successful on paper, but something inside whispers that you're only scratching the surface. That's not laziness. That's your unconscious speaking. Jung believed every person carries seeds of possibility, archetypes, talents, energies waiting to emerge. Ignore them and they rot. Nurture them and they transform you. A 2020 Yale study on latent capacity showed that people who engaged in activities outside their established skill set reported greater well-being and creativity, even when they weren't initially good at them. The psyche wants expansion. Ask yourself, is your potential truly missing, or have you just stopped answering its call? Sign 13. You live through labels. I'm this kind of person. I'm not the type who. People like me don't. Labels feel safe. They give the ego something to cling to, but they're also cages. The more tightly you identify with them, the less room there is for growth. Jung warned against over-identification with the persona. The Stoics echoed this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Discard your misperceptions. Stop being jerked like a puppet. Limit yourself to the present." A 2018 Cambridge study found that people who rigidly self-labeled by career, political identity, or social role were more prone to anxiety and existential crises when those roles shifted. If you define yourself only by labels, you haven't found yourself yet. You've only found a costume. Sign 14. You're haunted by the missing piece. Do you ever feel like something's absent, though you can't name what it is? As if your life is a puzzle with one essential piece missing? That ache is real. Jung called it the search for the self, the totality that unites conscious and unconscious. Until you begin that integration, life feels incomplete, no matter what you achieve. Philosopher Alan Watts compared it to trying to drink from an empty cup. You can pour in achievements, relationships, money, but without wholeness, it never fills. A 2019 Stanford study found that people who described their lives as fragmented, divided between roles, expectations, and inner conflict, scored lowest in long-term fulfillment, regardless of external success. The missing piece is not outside. It's the part of you you've been avoiding. Sign 15. You don't recognize who you are anymore. Maybe you've caught your reflection and thought, who is this person? Maybe you've built a life that looks right from the outside, but feels wrong from within. This is the final, and most painful, sign. You've built an identity so far from your essence that you no longer feel at home in your own skin. Jung warned that when the ego loses alignment with the self, the psyche responds with symptoms: anxiety, emptiness, even breakdown. But breakdown, he said, can also be breakthrough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." And Jung echoed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." So here's the truth. If any of these 15 signs resonated with you, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're being invited. Invited to stop living half asleep. Invited to stop mistaking masks for identity. Invited to stop running from the shadow and instead integrate it. Because life doesn't begin when the world approves of you. Life begins when you approve of yourself. When you face the patterns. When you embrace the shadow. When you remember the self that's been there all along. The Stoics knew it. Jung knew it. And deep down, you know it too. The path isn't about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming the person you were always meant to be. So ask yourself, will you keep playing the role written for you? Or will you pick up the pen and finally write your own?